I just returned to the parish from 2 wonderful communion visits. Actually, I was visiting a husband and wife, but they don't live together. The wife lives in the nursing home part of this complex. She requires more care, and her husband lives in the assisted living facility part of the same complex, but it's in a different building. I was able to visit the wife first today, and both always have just beautiful spirits, and I love visiting both of them. But when I walked into the nursing home room of the wife, her spirit was particularly bright today, and she was beaming. And I asked her about it, and she told me that for the first time in forever, she had just had a visit with her husband in her room. He had been working hard at therapy to get strong enough to be able to ride his scooter by himself to her room so he could visit with her. And we had a wonderful time talking about the gift of that visit. She was feasting off of it and finding so much strength and love in it. And we talked about it, we prayed, and then as I was getting up to then go to his part of the facility to visit him, I asked her, is there anything you'd like me to relay to your husband when I go see him? And she looked at me with a big grin and she said, you tell him to visit me a lot more often now. And she gave me a wink. And when I went to visit him, he was so happy that he was able to see his wife and so proud of the work he had put into therapy to get strong enough to make that visit. I thought of both, how they've been navigating this wilderness, both having serious health issues and the wilderness of disconnection that's brought to them. And yet how in this simple act of visiting one another for the first time in a long time, it was as though there was this table of life and love set before them in their wilderness. And they were feasting off of it and are likely going to feast off and feed off of it for days to come. In Psalm 78, the psalmist sings of God's ability to sustain God's people when they were wandering in the wilderness after being liberated from slavery, even though it wasn't always in ways the people had hoped for or expected. But in verse 19, the psalmist sings of God's ability to nonetheless be able to set a table for the people, even in the midst of the wilderness, so that they could find some life and love and sustenance to feed off of in the midst of their wilderness. And then that is a holy invitation for all of us to pause and pray today. I suspect we can all name times in our lives when we've journeyed through a pretty deep, dark wilderness. Maybe we're there right now. But I also hope and suspect we can name times where we experience some tables of life and love being set in the midst of the wilderness. And oftentimes that comes and acts as simple as someone reaching out to us and visiting us, like a husband did with his wife just a few hours ago. And in that, we're able to find a banquet of enough love and life to feed off of and be sustained by, even in our darkest, deepest wilderness. God's peace and blessings to you all.